Hello, my fellow sovereign nodes. Before we get started today, I wanted to make a quick mention about the one-on-one healing sessions that are being offered by members of the Decentralized Consciousness community. There are currently 7 of us that are offering these amazing sessions. I've done multiple with each member and have found that in each case, they have met me with their specific, unique talents exactly where I needed and what I needed help with. If this at all resonates with you, sparks your curiosity, check out bitcoin-consciousness.com/sessions and reach out to one of us. Thanks for listening and enjoy this episode. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Decentralized Consciousness Podcast. Today, returning on the podcast, I have Nozomi Hayase, and today, I wrote out to Nozomi to discuss her latest article, which is entitled Bitcoin Virgin Currency, A Journey into the Sacred Heart. Nozomi, how are you doing? It's been a while since you've been on the show, and you and I have never had a podcast conversation before. The last one was Osama. So
yes.
How are you?
Yeah. So thank you for having me, first of all. And I like the concept of decentralized consciousness, very much. And it's really ties into, what I talked about in my article, the divine feminine and feminine consciousness, which is, decentralized consciousness. It's the source. It's the oneness. It's the whole creation and everything that contains nothing at the same time, So I think, it's good to talk about how Bitcoin relates to the restoration of this divine feminine consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've been fairly active too in the Telegram community group, and you said that you've really been going deep in a lot of your meditations. So how's all that been going?
Yeah, it's just the Bitcoin rabbit hole goes deeper and deeper, and I think from maybe last year, around 2023, at the end of 2023, or no, at the end of 2022, actually, some event happened in my life that actually brought up a deep childhood wound. Something that something that was, that had a huge impact in shaping who I was, who I am, and the childhood patterns, the destructive patterns, I guess, and psychological, I guess, issues that I buried deep inside me, just came up, right? So I had to deal with it, and that, it was not something that I wanted to do, of course, right? I avoided to the point that I didn't even know that wound existed, But somehow this event that made me just to confront. So that changed the kind of a trajectory of my life, that I pretty much retreated from social media or being active in the Bitcoin space, to the point that people are kind of wondering how I'm doing. You are not writing, you are not active, you don't go to conferences, what are you doing? And, all of those things. And so I had to kind of dig deeper into, to work through some of the issues that I had. And, only to realize that, wow, how deep this Bitcoin rabbit hole goes. People have no idea how deep it is. And now I feel like I came around. I got to the point where I'm now willing to change myself and willing to work on myself to heal these wounds. So that led me to Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, he, for those who are not familiar with his work, he's I would say he's a like neuroscientist. He's a chiropractitioner, but he studied methodical practices and all, quantum physics and neuroscience, and come up with his own kind of formula to help people transform themselves. So I, ever since I discovered his work, I was hooked, and I started to do his meditations, and so that really changed me. I mean, I was more, I would say I was living in the head. Like I tried to solve problems intellectually, the problems that cannot be solved intellectually. And I had my background in psychology, so I do have tools, but these are still kind of more abstract, like based on concept, for instance, And so now I just, being introduced to Dr. Joe Dispenza's work and doing meditations, I am now finding a way to work on my issues, not through my mind, but through something larger than myself, one would call the divine force, or, God, or in infinite universe, intelligence of the universe, or whatever, one would call. And the body is intelligence. So it's a profound shift, which, I don't know if other people can see that, but I think that it's something hard to describe to people, I mean, I don't know how you have experienced something like that by, through your own experience of falling down the rabbit hole, big rabbit hole.
Yep, very similar.
Right. And then you won't believe, I mean, like, I thought that I worked on it, right? Like, one way or the other, I think that the people who become aware of their childhood wound, right? Everybody has these, wounds and patterns that are kind of destructive. And I thought that I worked on it, and that I have a good handle of it, that I learned to love myself. And it actually related to, the issue was related to self-love, how to love myself, how to accept myself fully, and I thought that I've done that. And so it was to be reminded of the fact that I still have to work on it, and it's a process that I don't know if it ever ends, but it helped me grow and bring me to a future, vision of a future that I strive to attain. So, and in the process of working through my own issues, as I said in my article, I found the divine intelligence that is feminine in nature. And when I say feminine, I don't mean, like that's specific to women, it's the feminine, it's like a principle, it's a quality, like the Chinese, the Tao's yin and yang and yin, that it's a certain kind of energetic quality that is, that the absence of that in our society, and our disconnection with that divine feminine force is creating a lot of suffering and pain. And I experienced that through my own suffering, through my own working through of my own issues. So I speak from my experience, and it's just it's just a sharing of my own experience, that this is how I experienced. And then started to see, how the fiat system pushes that away, pushes the divine intelligence away, and then build the artificial matrix, artificial system. And money is, of course, is a vital part of constructing this system, right? And then Bitcoin actually breaks down the artificial system and bring us back to the source. So this article was kind of my attempt to illustrate how Bitcoin does it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really beautiful. You touched on something that I want to get deeper into, which is the idea of self-love.
Yes.
And I've been exploring this more deeply as well. And, I think there's this idea of self, and then there's the other side of it, which is judgment. So
Yes.
we have the
Yes.
the love of the self, which you can almost say is more like just a neutral acceptance for who you are. You're not really doing anything to
Yes.
love yourself, but instead you're you're not you're not like resist so hard against who you are or what you want to do. And if for those who did listen to the last Decentralized Consciousness podcast, I talked about the role of identity and forming an identity around this human existence and functioning in the greater world and society. And I think that there are always going to be elements where, as you approach the edges of who you define yourself to be, so I define myself as a Bitcoiner and not a shitcoiner, right? So I have this hard line definition. And so when there is something that comes in, which, let's say, an opportunity, right? There's an opportunity for me to, we get spammed as Bitcoiners. We get spammed all the time by people who are trying to get us to buy some random shitcoin or invest in like a project or a pre-mine, which you had mentioned in the article, the pre-mining.
Right.
There is an element where we are not self-loving. We're actually, making a judgment as to who we are and who we are defining ourselves to be.
Yes.
But there's also, so there's like, I'm not a shitcoiner, and I'm taking a hardline stance against who I am defining myself to be. But there's also, there's almost like a divine feminine approach to this, I guess, judgment, which is the role of emotion, the role of intuition, the role of feelings. I feel into this pre-mine project, and I feel into I feel into this identity of my higher self, and I say, oh no, I'm resonating with Bitcoin on more of like a soul level, on the principle of what this is offering for me, my family, and the future of humanity and what we can create together, instead of taking like this hard line. Because we have this element in the Bitcoin space where, the meme culture and the hornet's nest culture, where we're going to fight back, and we're fighting for our principles and what we believe in. But there's something I think a lot of people are getting really deep into. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this identification, I think that it's when we have ego identification of ourselves as Bitcoiner, or, I as a Japanese woman, or, I mean, that ego need to have that identification, right? That for us to exist in a society, and we need to be perceived by others, then parts of us, we need to separate parts of us from the oneness consciousness, so that we could place ourselves in space and time, being, being to something like being objectified, being defined, being seen. But that person identification that is perceived is not full of ourselves, right? Because it's our kind of like a relativity. Like once we place ourselves in a relative space, relative field, it creates a split of consciousness and unconscious, if you know what I mean. So that we cannot, as it exists, as humanity exists as it is now, we cannot really exist as full subjective being, because we don't have the capacity to fully recognize the other, fully see the person. There is a limit in how we perceive each other. So the identity basically fundamentally is based on separation. Anytime we identify ourselves as something, it creates separation. It takes us away from who we really are and the oneness of all. But in order for us to be individual, of course, we have to have identity. We have to engage ourselves in the process of identification. So there is that kind of contradiction. And what I find interesting is that self-love, the process of loving ourselves, basically, as you said, it's not about doing things. And fundamentally, it's about being. It's us to attain the state of being. And that in that state of being, we will generate our sense of worthiness. So I think that for me personally, I realized that I derived a sense of worthiness by doing, and I think most people can relate to me on this. That I love writing, and even writing itself has become some form of a way of deriving a sense of meaning and value. That I identify myself as a writer so much that there was the element of force, like if I don't write on a regular basis, then I feel like I have to do it. I have to write, for me to be valuable, or, I don't feel maybe worthy if I don't, if I don't work, or if I'm not productive, or if I do things, and self-love really is to accept ourselves for doing nothing, basically, just being. So I'm variable just to exist, just to, breathing the air, that itself, gives me value. Like I am worthy just being, just to be. And which is a kind of hard thing to learn. But once I understand this, then I realized if I'm worthy, then without doing anything, just as a starting point, if I have self-worthiness, then everything I would do, the motives or impulse that guide my action would become love. I do things because I love doing, I enjoy doing, not because I feel obligated to do, or not because someone told me to do, or not because I want to please other people. Because once I gain self-love, once I accept myself that I am worthy, just existing, then the old sense of lack and need just go away. And that itself is a kind of a transformation. And so now, that process of learning to love myself changed the way I write as well. Like nowadays I don't write unless I want to write, and I don't force myself. So I start writing an article, and it takes so many weeks to get, because I don't have, before, like, I was able to finish it right away because I forced myself to complete it, right? Once I start. But now I'm like, okay, I'm going to just write when I love to write. So then, that the impulse to write won't come for like 2 weeks or something. Then, sometimes I wonder, like, am I going to finish this article, But, but I think that, like you said, it's the self-love is, it's not about doing, and it's about being, and that's, I think it's the fiat system really makes us, what it does is it's makes us identify ourselves with things outside of us, and like you said, it's the value, right? It's a value judgment. It's once we identify ourselves and then we start to kind of judge ourselves, here comes comparison. We start to compare ourselves with others, and something has more value than the other, right? And that when we engage with that kind of valuation process, we lose our connection to the divine. And maybe that's, I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. And I feel like, you know what, we could just end the podcast right here because there is so much good information that you just gave. But no, I want to continue going deeper. So,
but one thing I wanted to actually talk about the fiat system, and I mentioned the GDP, right? Well, the one of the instrument that fiat system uses is the abstract concept of GDP, gross domestic product. It's the kind of a formula that economists use to measure the nation's economic development, and which is very interesting because in the sense that it actually leads to commodification of life. So the commodification is the process that something not previously considered an object to be bought or sold become one that has particular value within the marketplace, right? So, for instance, water, we have like abundant water. It doesn't have a value in a marketplace until it's put into the bottle and then sold in the market. Then all of a sudden it has a price and it has a value, and it's become a part of economic activities, right? And there are things that in life that cannot be commodified. But what fiat system did was, with the clever formula like a GDP and the use of market forces, economic forces, they managed to kind of commodify life. And I find the one of the destructive effects of this commodification is how it influenced our relationship to our body, and how our body became commodified. That whether we know or not, that we don't have healthy relationship with our bodies. And nowadays the beauty industry, for instance, and consumer economy that produce manufactured images of ideal beauty, for instance, the thin models, and and people now become obsessed with diet and epidemic of anorexia, bulimia, eating disorder, and nowadays there's things as body dysmorphic disorder, which is as kind of a psychological state where people just they just start to see exaggerated perceived flaws about themselves. Like, other people don't notice something wrong with them, but for them, something is wrong. And then they become so obsessed with that part of the body, for instance. And we do have, transgender issues, how gender confusion, for instance, and all about our relation. It's all related to commodification of ourselves,
Right.
commodification of
Outside
body.
in, right?
Yes, and then it's interesting that how even those who don't necessarily engage in excessive diet or that we kind of participate in that kind of commodification of ourselves by allowing ourselves to be seen as object, right? So like good example is like dating app like Tinder, like how people start to see each other as a body and sexualize, treat other person as a sexual object, and we allow ourselves to be perceived as an object and then given value as an object. And then it's in a sense that we kind of engage in kind of economic activities that is devoid of real heart-based human interaction. So I find this has devastating effect, and that, and which relate to the article that I wrote, previous article I wrote before this my newest piece, which is the Bitcoin magical internet of money that dispels dispels the kind of the what's the word? What the consumer capitalists believe us to be who we are, and in a sense that I think we have been hypnotized by the consumer economy that had certain value system, the overly focused on physical body, for instance, or a spell of materialism, that's how I call, and make us not be able to see values in things that are not tangible, like the smile of someone you love or kindness that you experienced, or spending time in nature. There are things that you cannot put the price tag on, right? Something that you experience through your feeling, and the value that is generated through feeling is different than the value that come from accumulation of material goods. It's different, right? And so and I think the Bitcoin shatters this abstract formula of things like DGP and dispel the spell of materialism and allow us to feel, and which is divine feminine intelligence. And we can free ourselves, we can reclaim our own body and then find a healthy relationship to our body. It's like owning our private key, right? So part of owning our private keys is owning our body, and refuse our body to be objectified and commodified and be sold and exploited. And in many ways that our body can be exploited, through our medical system, or in the beauty industry. I mean, there are many, many ways that, somehow the commercial interest apply to our body, and we become complicit in participating, perpetuating this this commodification of ourselves.
Actually, something that is very interesting that just came up for me is
Mm-hmm.
as most Bitcoiners know, the current system, the fiat system, is a debt-based system.
Yes.
And basically what that means is that someone else owns your money. The actual money, or the representation of value, is owned and controlled by someone else. And in order for it to even exist in circulation, they have to grant you permission to use it. And this makes complete sense with the old world, fiat world idea of outside in, and looking at everything else as being externally owned, externally motivated.
Right.
I've actually been playing around with this idea as well, and like what ownership actually is. And in America, our founders and the documents that they put together, they said that our inalienable rights are
Yes.
those of our life, liberty, and
pursuit
property.
Yes.
Well, so they put pursuit of happiness in the Constitution because the word property was very controversial for them, and it was hard for them to define. But property, as I understand it, is ourselves, our own body, and the products of the things that we create on this earthly plane.
Definitely.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And so
I think what's interesting is that it actually leads to the Cartesian spirit of body and mind, that there's a body here and there's mind, and these two are separate somehow, and I think that that's where I think the separation had started, I think, especially in the West, and we do have this external, this outer, this material world that we see through our senses, and then we have this internal world, which most of us, I think, because our society as it exists so much emphasizes on the material world, to the point that that's the only world that exists. So many of us don't, not only don't believe in maybe there is such thing as the internal world, but they're kind of conditioned not to look inside, and then constantly focus on outside themselves, and paying attention to things outside of us, right? Mm-hmm. And what I found interesting is the word, right? Pay attention. So we are paying attention. So in the sense that we are spending energies, right? When we pay attention to something, it's like money, it's like currency. Energy is currency, and we are actually paying attention. And then it's the media, for instance, it's the images that are presented on the magazines, and they send us kind of signals at the very speak to us at the very unconscious level through our eyes, right? And our eyes are stimulated, for instance, and the images have imprint on our deep unconscious level, and then that very much influence how we behave, how we purchase things, how we transact, how we look at ourselves, how we interact with one another, by means of consumer capitalism, of course. But so, and then the debt, as you pointed out, it's kind of like in this system, it's really a matrix, really. I mean, we are born to be a slave. We owe them, like we owe the Federal Reserve or the U.S. government, that somehow we cannot exist as just worthy of just being. We owe them, so that we have to become someone. We have to please them. We have to seek for approval and get permission to become worthy, right? So we are indebted to them, right? So that's a completely different system than, we are coming into the system inherently worthy without doing anything, right? So then we don't owe anything. We could exist as just pure love, as without any lack or need, and we could just be creative. We could give, which Bitcoin is the asset-based currency. So it's inherently, it has a value. It has inherent value, and that in that system, of course, we could exist as each of us being born as worthy, and that's kind of go back to what Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence, right? All men are created equal, like what you said. We have right to life, liberty, and pursuit of property. That these are inherent right. It's not something that we have to strive to earn them, right? So that's the difference between right. This is legal rights. It's not a legal right. It's a birthright. It's inherent, inalienable rights. It's our natural rights that we all have at birth, right? And somehow I think that in the fiat system, which is debt-based system, turn these ideals, these inherent rights into legal rights. That's something that we have to earn, and we have to behave in a certain way to get that, to experience life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. So there's the fundamental difference between Bitcoin and the fiat money. And then like you said, it's the property. It's about us. Like it's owning ourselves, and the part of owning ourselves is not just owning our mind, but owning our body, right? And owning our soul and the feelings, and that basically, I think that it's the Bitcoin rabbit hole, in my opinion. If you sincerely engage with this process, that would lead us to reclaim our mind, reclaim our body, and reclaim our spirit. And maybe the part of the process requires us to stop paying attention, withdraw our attention from external environment, what is talked about on social media. And this includes even the Bitcoin space on, X, and how, people are glued to the screen, and then, who tweet what, and there's something happening in the Bitcoin space and the people are overly focused on it. I think that's a trap of itself that, yes, we need to be informed about what's happening, but we have to be also careful, not be sucked in by the world that is intermediate by technology, and find a way to have authentic relationship with ourselves and one another, and spend some time in nature.
Yeah, when you brought up the self-love and the inherent value in yourself, I thought about if you can imagine yourself taking a trip to somewhere beautiful and tropical, some gorgeous tropical island, and it's extremely valuable because we have to spend money to buy a plane ticket. We have to spend money for the accommodations, and then we spend money while we're there visiting. We spend time away from our jobs, which also, so there's like there could be lost income, all kinds of stuff. But if you can just imagine for a second that you could instantaneously transport yourself to this tropical place where the sun shines bright, the temperature is perfect all the time. You could be walking barefoot on a white sand beach.
Yes.
Does that have value to you? And yeah, the answer is obvious. It's like, yes, there's absolute value in being in this different place, and even if I don't have to spend money on it. And so if you can transmute that into other places in your life, you can begin to see that you are on the white sand beach all of the time. You can get this feeling. You don't have to. And I think a lot of us have to physically leave a lot of
Yes.
times, and takes the form of, I need to go out and I need to take time off work and go on a vacation, or I need
Yes.
to go to a restaurant with friends and and drink with them, and spend time doing leisure things so that I can remove from this other external identity and
Right.
be in this thing that
Yes.
we have all
Right.
collectively defined as valuable, but you're in the value. You are in the value
Yes.
right now. You just you
Right.
just don't see it. And I do the same thing. Like I'm far from perfect when it comes to seeing this value in my own life too, and feeling that self-love. But it's so cool to conceptualizing that here with you today.
Yeah. And I think that the desire to work hard, or constantly engage with external world, social events, or accumulate things, or that desire stems from the fact that we feel empty inside, that we feel unworthy. Like, in order for us to be worthy, like we constantly like feel like we have to be doing something, right? And I think that's the kind of, it's a symptom of this fiat system, that because it's because the money itself doesn't have any intrinsic value to begin with, right? That we have to constantly extract from things outside of us, and we are not at peace ever. Like, I think that even, I experienced that I never, like, I was workaholic before, that I never took vacation or anything, and even like when I had some break, I felt bad. Like, I felt like a sense of guilt, like, oh my gosh, I wasted for 2 hours talking to my friend on the phone, or oh my god, I went to a movie, and and it was so bad, that for me it was so bad that I when I go to the movie theater to watch movie, I always had a notepad, and then I have to write down, like, like I have to study, I have to learn something from watching the movie, and then when I go home, like, I write a review, or what I learned, or something like that. And my friend said, oh my god, why are you doing this? And then I was like, well, I just feel bad. I feel like wasting my time just being just lost in watching movie like that. So that's how bad, for me, that this kind of this urge to be productive was. But now I don't have that at all, right? But I think one way or the other, it's just we are conditioned at the deep level that we have to derive a sense of worthiness by doing. So it's a huge shift from that to finding peace within, so that we could just simply be, and then out of that place, if we choose to do something, it comes out of our own freedom, our free will, and only on that freedom we can love, we can act, we can create the value of love, and without it, we were simply acting out of compulsion, impulse, right? That we have no control over. So I think Bitcoin, as an asset-based currency that provides freedom, so that we could neutralize all internal impulses, and then we can choose to love. We can choose to align our actions with, what, with the divine will, or what gives us joy and love, and which create a complete paradigm shift in how we define morality. So morality, that is defined in Orthodox religions like Christianity or Judaism, or any kind of religions, I think, are like, there's this good and bad, there's this duality, right? And then these are the good attributes, virtues, and you must strive for attaining them. And then these are the bad things that you stay away from, right? And then we kind of engage ourselves with this game of, becoming a good person, but there is a new level of morality, which just simply, it's like whenever you act out of love, you are actually doing good. And in order for us, and that, it dissolves this duality in a sense that somehow by each person being true to oneself and act out of love, it brings harmony, it brings coherence in the social realm, and that it brings order. And some people might say, how could that be possible, right? It's like it will create chaos. If each individual start to do what they want to do, it will create chaos. But somehow, miraculously, if it's applied correctly, and if one is sincere to truly honor the deepest impulse, not the kind of desires, the transient desires that are actually not aligned with your soul, but the ones that really come from your, your souls, your spirit, And if you follow that, you actually maintain the order that you actually following the highest law of morality, which is kind of hard to describe. But for me, it was a learning experience of like, I need to kind of shift my mind and let go of this old programming, this dualistic morality, and become aware of it and let go of it, and then install a new moral program, I guess, And then I now truly believe that all I have to do is just each moment, just be in the present moment and just do what gives me joy and love. And truly believe that by me doing it, I'm actually setting a model for others to follow, others to do the same. And by changing myself, bringing myself back to harmony, then I am contributing to creating peace and harmony in the world. And that's a huge, it's kind of like a 180 degrees shift in my life, because I was deeply caught up with this dualistic morality, and I was a hardcore activist, and engaged in social justice for years. So, I just now have this different way of being, I guess.
Yeah, and it's not black and white. I totally resonate with that, because as I'm learning to live more authentically and do things that I genuinely want to do, it's all of these patterns come in, these old models for morality, they come in all day long, like they're constantly happening. And it takes some time to learn them and understand them and really be able to recognize them in real time. A lot of times what I've found in practice is I'll make an action or a series of actions, and I'll be like, why am I feeling now so bad and have been feeling bad for so long? And I can actually trace it back to, here was the inauthentic action. Here's the externality that I was chasing, or the false belief that made me take the series of actions. So, there's kind of a retroactive tool set that you can take too, to help you become more aware of your propensity to try to satisfy these externalities. Because what I am learning about is that, I'll go through spells where, just like you said, I don't feel like doing anything. Like I just feel like I feel really, really, really unmotivated. And then I also have these external programs which tell me to feel extra bad about being unmotivated, because if you're not a productive member of society, then you're worthless, and that is, rationally speaking, like we are right now, it's like, I know that's not true, right? I know,
exactly.
I know that it's not true.
It's so much kind of a belief, right? Belief that we were inherited, I guess, and that one of which is that we have to work 9 to 5. That's one of the belief, and so if you are not working 9 to 5, then there's something wrong with you. Or, let's say if you are just wealthy, like you don't have to work or whatever, or you do something that you only work for 1 hour, let's say, a day, and then you can make enough income. But then somewhere like in you, like in us, like feel like, maybe there's something wrong with me that I have to be working for like 8 hours a day or something. But then when you step back and look at it, that's a construct. It's a social construct that was just artificially created, and we believed it. That's why like we have to do it, right? And then because we believe it, we attract that kind of reality, that we make us have that kind of reality, But if we recognize that as a belief, then we have a choice, right? Once we become aware of it and question, like, where does that come from? Is it really true, right? Then we have a choice to change that belief. And then maybe we could tell ourselves, no, job basically means something that we love doing. And so then we don't, our relationship to work changes, that we do something we love doing. And I don't consider that to be like I'm working, and so then, and it's okay to live like that. It's a kind of new, I'm pioneering a way to redefine what job look like, perhaps, So we have a lot of belief that are installed. And one of the things that, like I said, I was now introduced to Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, and he really challenges, he says the infinite potential, that's the term he uses, that there is infinite potential that lives within us that we can all access to, right? And we can change our belief systems, and we can create, basically, he basically reminds us of the fact that our thought and the feelings create reality. So, nobody is a victim. We are the creator. We are creating our own reality each moment through our thought and feeling. And this is not just a new agey, just a thing, it's real. It's backed by science. And then if that's the case, then just be more observant and see what I believe, what I think. And a trick that I found is that for a long time, I thought that emotions, what I feel, emotions are real. Like that's something I need to trust, and then that's real. So let's say if I feel certain way about people, or about relationship or whatever, I just I just took it as kind of, okay, that's my reality. That's something that is real, And then Joe Dispenza talks about how we memorize emotions. So whenever we feel emotions, that's past. That's something that we have experienced in the past. And we are simply repeating them. We're simply experiencing those feelings, and which define a certain experience, but it doesn't have to bind us in a certain reality. We could change them. And so that was a kind of insightful thing for me, so that whenever like emotion come up, I now can distance myself from these emotions and then look at them and then say, okay, I feel bad about this, or I feel this and that. And ask myself, what do I want? Who I want to become? What type of relationship I want to have? Then I could, basically transmute these emotions that are rooted in the past, and open up a new possibility with elevated emotions of love and peace and gratitude. Then I can free myself from the past, basically. And so, to realize, wow, that we memorize these emotions. So, even though like these are authentic emotions, but I'm just simply repeating the past. Anytime like I allow emotions to dictate my choices, So yeah, so but the key is to become aware, right? Mm-hmm. Because otherwise we just operate as autopilot, just programming. and just doing things like a machine does, and then to some degree, we need to have that kind of programming. I mean, they are useful, like these habits are useful, like we can drive a car, or, we can use computer, or, the one's memorized skills are useful. But at the same time, when we make decisions and when we are creating our own reality, we don't want to, I think, act as kind of autopilot, we want to be actively creating. And yeah, so I think that it's like we code, we code our own programming, I guess, and create our own reality. And as I see it, is Bitcoin is just a tool. And I think Bitcoiners working on, working on claiming their own creative power and aligning themselves with the source energy, or whatever one would call, makes a difference. I think has a potential to transform the world. So I'm very much kind of interested in, developing the capacity within myself, and eventually, like, I like to help other Bitcoiners in this process, how they could code their, start coding their own reality, and freeing themselves from the past and stuff,
Yeah. What I love about Joe Dispenza is in his practical approaches
Yes.
to spirituality is like, so the way that I understand emotions is it's almost like you are triggering this big pattern between belief, like like a subconscious belief, which is instantaneously met with a feeling, which is then instantaneously met with a program that repeats whenever you get that emotion, right? And every emotion, it's not like not like what we were taught when we were kids, where it's like you are either angry or sad or mad or happy. There's like 5 emotions, and no, every emotion is a completely unique feeling to every single situation. There is an infinite spectrum of emotion, and we have a very limited way of describing what all of them are. And I know for me, as a very practical person, really getting excited about spirituality and understanding emotions. Understanding emotions is a very, very interesting subject to me, because I know that God gave me these things for a reason. I know that my emotions are here for something. And I think they are the very subject of today's conversation, which is the divine feminine. I think that they are the inescapable aspect of divine feminine, what the divine and what I should say non-divine masculine, which dominates our world today, is trying to do is to flush that out. The more and more that you can push away these emotions and say, no, you don't need, in fact, well, actually, you could almost say that the divine masculine, which is in control of the world, knows this, and knows that the divine feminine that comes through is inevitable in the form of emotion. So what it does is it leverages fear. It leverages the fear patterns, and that's how the divine masculine continues to control us externally.
And I think that the divine feminine, in its essence, is a pure consciousness, and that it's pure feeling, which is the pure feeling is simply feeling of love, which is not distorted with anything. Like it's a love. It's almost like, I would even say, like, it's almost is a form of intelligence. So, the intelligence, when we hear the word intelligence, we associate that with reason or rationality, but then actually the heart has its own intelligence, which is the pure feeling. And it's almost like, I could use the word maybe clarity, or 0 point, or clarity. It's like a crystal clear water, that's maybe the best way to describe it, because a feeling or emotions, somehow it's kind of create images of all different kinds of emotions, like anger and hatred and, different dramatic ranges of, emotions. But that's not what the divine feminine is. It's the pure consciousness. So whenever we react, we have these emotions being provoked. That's not divine feminine. And if you go to therapy, then therapists, they kind of assure, confirm your feeling, right? The therapist listen to your feelings and then tune it back to you and reflect back, and then you feel kind of affirmation of what you experience. But the problem about this is that, in some cases it works, it's a part of the necessary process for healing. But if it's just finishes there, then it actually reinforces the feeling and experience. So and doesn't provide a way to transmute them and then free people from the trapped emotions, right? So it's these emotions, the lower emotions, so to speak, that are trapped in the lower three chakras, for instance, based on survival, fear, aggression, competition, lack, need, lack of self-love, and all of that stuff, that create emotions, right? And that had to do with, I think, it's the wounded masculine plays a role in generating these emotions. And the divine feminine, as a pure consciousness, allow us to transmute these emotions, lower emotions, and bring it back to the source. So then it's basically kind of that these emotions are transformed into love, dissolved into love, and we would experience elevated feeling. And then once we experience elevated feelings, we free ourselves from the past. We free ourselves from judgment or belief system that are not really aligned with our highest good or aligned with our truth. So when we talk about, I think, emotions and feeling, I think it's important to differentiate what we are talking about, right? Are we talking about trapped emotions, that is not a part of divine feminine, or you could say it's a wounded feminine, maybe, or are we talking about the Holy Grail, basically the divine feminine, the pure consciousness? And so I think that it's the meditations that Dr. Joe Dispenza offers. For me, it's kind of a way of alchemical transformation. It's really transformed. Like he teaches us to use breath, for instance. So then we basically breathe and really works through the trapped emotions in the lower three chakras, and that's and you won't believe how much trapped emotions that are there, and once you start transmuting them, then these emotions, when they come up, it becomes less and less. It creates a space for us to be still and not to react, and before, we couldn't. Maybe we could just react, right? There's a trigger that something happened in the past that it's happening again, that you become mad and you don't have a choice. You just react impulsively. And now you can question that emotion, and then you could say, wait a second, where does that come from? And then you feel familiar with the emotion. That's why you feel right to feel this way. But it's simply it's familiar to us, right? Then you have a choice to change that. Like, do I want to have this feeling, or do I want to have something else? Do I want to, and then once you experience a sense of peace and love, you don't want to trade that. You don't want to engage in those lower emotions, because you want to keep that feeling of love, right? And you do anything to keep keep that pure consciousness, I think, you know.
Yeah, that brings up, because you had mentioned therapy at one point, and it is a
Mm-hmm.
very interesting way to look at it, because in therapy,
Mm-hmm.
so therapy as a whole, especially in Western culture, has
Yes.
become very mainstream popular.
Yes.
And honestly, I think that it has very, very good intentions, and I think it has
Mm-hmm.
helped a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that I will say about it that's probably an unpopular opinion, it's really coming in from a higher place of understanding, and it relates to all of this, which is, while we are justified to
Mm-hmm.
feel all of our emotions, therapy in a way is sort of encourages us to continue to attach to them. You know, there are certain,
Yes.
you know, I mean, there are certain things that absolutely the therapist is great at helping us to uncover. Oh, okay, this goes back to this childhood trauma and this pain.
Yeah.
Let's let go of that. You know, you don't need that. But then at a certain point as well, you know, they're like, oh, but this emotion is coming up because this is important to you.
Right.
And then that's it. They just stop there. They're like, okay, well, I feel this emotion because this is my belief and this is important to me, and that's
right.
You know, that's who I am, and there's no more. They just stop right there.
Right.
And
Right.
while I think that is somewhat good, because it does encourage a type of self-love, it still stops people, like, by like solidifying an identity around this emotional limit.
Because knowing where that come from, like, you know, my childhood trauma, for instance, I can I can trace it, right? The certain event that happened in my childhood. And I spend hours and hours analyzing. And the more I know about it, and, you know, I learn psychological theories associated with it, it just doesn't change the situation, right? At the end of the day, I only know why this happened, but it doesn't provide a way for me to transform the experience. So it's, you know, it's one thing's, and I even say, like, you know, we don't necessarily have to know why certain things happen or why we feel it in a certain way. I mean, who knows? I mean, it could be like our past life experience or what, you know? I mean, I don't care, like, how I got them. I want to know how to free myself from that experience, right? So I think that you are right. I think that therapy, oftentimes from my experience, it stopped there, you know, and it's also, I find it not empowering to me. You know, I myself, I mean, I have gone through a clinical psychology program, and then I, you know, wanted to become a therapist. So I went through the system, but I just felt like, you know, it's more like I like it to be more educational process, that, you know, that maybe the therapist could be just a teacher that teaches us tool for us to use. So it's like Dr. Joe Dispenza, you know, he teaches us, right? He shared his knowledge that he gained in healing himself. So he used that tool to heal himself, and now he's sharing what he went through from his own experience. And then, you know, we are the one who do the work. He doesn't do the work for us. You know, it's not like that, you know, healers or therapists to come in and then we just sit there and then we receive the healing and then we miraculously heal ourselves.
Right.
It's a different, it's like, it's the old idea. I mean, that sounds easy, right? We pay money and then we just sit there, meditate or whatever, and then miraculously the, you know, healing occurs. But what Joe Dispenza's provide is, and what I like about his work is it's really empowering process. It's allow us to claim our own power and take charge of our own life, you know, and to become our own creator of our own life. And so yeah, it's for me, it's like, you know, I think that when one wants to heal oneself, that one almost like have to maybe, you know, hit the bottom to say, I want to change, you know, and I would do whatever it takes to change myself. And for that to happen, maybe sometimes pain and suffering become so severe that, one is forced to make that choice. But, and I think I like Bitcoin because that's also a path of self-empowerment. Bitcoin rabbit hole, for instance, it's like no one is forcing you to fall down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. You do it, you engage, start asking questions and go deeper and deeper, right? And then you meet the other fellow Bitcoiners on the basis of equality on the decentralized network, where no one is superior and inferior. It's like you meet another person who is just walking on his or own path, and we cross our paths together, and we share information and exchange gift, and that would maybe lead to healing for both of us, right? So that's what I kind of like about Bitcoin, that there is no authority, there is no intermediary, there is no hierarchy, that there is no therapist telling you what to do, or no healers trying to heal you, but everyone is just Bitcoiners and engaged in the self-empowerment, and so that's so that's what I like about. And then also that your podcast, I mean, it's really provides a space for people to exchange ideas, and it's I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And this whole element of the divine feminine and decentralization and understanding what is the emotional spectrum what we're looking for here. And as you were talking, I kind of came up with a slightly different model. So, earlier I was talking about this infinitely wide emotional spectrum where, it just never ends, right? And it's all spread out. But I think this is almost like you have a divine feminine that has become fractalized, just like the divine masculine has, right? So it's a fractalized version of what's actually true, where everything is one. We're currently playing out all of this drama in separation and working to heal and come back together to one. So you can almost see it as like this emotional spectrum will eventually reconverge back into oneness, and this will be the version of our emotions that will guide us through our lives in the future, and the upgraded Bitcoin consciousness version of Earth. And the thing that I love about Bitcoin and decentralizing our healing is a lot of people think that just because we're decentralized, that I can never use somebody else's tools or somebody else's teachings, but really what, like in your case especially, because you can feel it and hear it the way that you talk about it, is that you have an element of your intuition and your divine feminine that is emotionally engaging for you, that says, yes, what Joe Dispenza is teaching me right now, his tool set is perfect. It feels really good to me. And it's not like it's coming from this external place of satisfying some other identity, but this is coming deep within you. And it is, it's this really divine feminine of what we call your inner node, the node of your soul.
Exactly. Right. So it's basically, we have to claim our own authority. We have to withdraw, our projection on to other people that whoever we thought more powerful than us, right? Therapists, politicians, teachers, celebrities, we unconsciously give away our power. Somehow, like, we think that they are more knowledgeable, they are more, attractive, they are more powerful, all the stuff. And none of which is true. And now we have to, step by step, basically take back our power, and start claiming our own shadow. And so that's a path of kind of attaining wholeness. And, in Jung's term, it's an individuation process, right? We are engaged in individuation process. And that becoming individual, obviously, we have to separate from this oneness consciousness that I, for instance, have to become woman, I have to become Japanese, I have to become particular and concrete, and me being Japanese is a different experience than me being African or Chinese, or right? So that's a specific thing. And so I have to have this kind of process of individuation. But at some point, we have to reunite, I think, connect back to the oneness. But this does not regress us. This doesn't makes us regress back to oneness in a way that we lose our unique individuality. That we would go back to oneness by preserving our individuality. And that individuality, that what makes us unique, is a gift. It's the value that we could all add to this oneness consciousness. So in the sense that I see it like, we are all God, part of God. And then God is just one consciousness experiencing the universe through each of us. And that as we develop our unique experience and consciousness, we are enriching the almighty, the universal consciousness or whatever that exists as one. So once we understand it, then there is no point of this racism or, all that, because it's like we all, we are one, that we are seeing each other. The person that you see interact with is part of you, right, at the deeper level. And so I think that, everybody, I think, have to deal with the fact that, we have this wounded part in ourselves, divine feminine, divine masculine. And, we exist as, like I'm a woman, but at the same time, we are all multidimensional beings, that they're part of us is not, the part of us exists without gender, right? So we have to also incorporate that awareness into our identity. So, but not in the way that how the mainstream external society took it in the form of transgender or transhumanism. That's not how things should go. That's the kind of inversion, in my opinion, of inversion. It's really because it's an internal state, and the multidimensional aspect of ourselves, the internal, right? So it's I do have divine masculine, I do have divine feminine embodied within me, but that doesn't mean that I have to change my body to become man, right? Or so it's just, again, it's I see it's or like what the transhumanism movement is doing is, to kind of transcend the humanness, or which is by physically ordering ourselves and by means of technology. I mean, that's not what we are. I think that's the opposite way of going in terms of our evolution, that we have to incorporate it internally, and and then accept the concreteness, and then embrace unique individuality. So that's a process, and I think it's Bitcoin community, I think, that provides a way for us to kind of find each other, and somehow kind of we experience synchronicities, and I find people who I don't talk to other Bitcoiners like the way I talk with you now, but I use the different languages, but somehow I feel like some of them get what I'm saying. So I think that's in them somehow, like it's we are working on the same kind of force or something, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like if I start to talk to other Bitcoiners about divine feminine, I mean, I think they would just turn around, and I won't have any. It's like, okay, I don't have time for this. Like the divine feminine, like somehow like that doesn't speak to them. But if I start to talk about Bitcoin's immaculate conception, or Satoshi as like a God figure or something, then I can engage them, I guess.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's what's so cool about your latest article too, is it engages that audience, I think, in a way that they'll resonate with, but then it really twists into some deeper levels of thinking. You know, there are Bitcoiners in this space which I really admire, like John Vallis and Robert
Yes.
Breedlove, who
Yes.
are so philosophical, and
Yes.
it seems like they're willing to be very, very spiritual as well. And so it
Yes.
feels like sometimes, like even when I'm in podcast recordings, I feel
Yes.
a part of myself needing to almost clarify with that section of the to kind of to bring it in from like a rational place, if you will, and try to use real world examples.
I see.
To, you know, to get them to understand, like, okay, if we a lot of them are hypothetical, but what I find is when you, and this is a great tool in meditation as well, when you play in hypotheticals, first of all, you have the safety of knowing that they're not real, or at least they're not real in the 3D manifested sense. But also they allow you to see a situation for what it really is. So I gave the example of being on the beach in Fiji, and you know how we attach value in planning the trip, taking off time from work, paying the money to the airline and the hotel and all that kind of stuff. But if you were instantaneously snapping yourself there is value just inherently being in that space. And you know, it's because, sure, there are obvious elements because it's outside of your regular lifestyle. It's a different place. It's beautiful. It's warm. However, these are all, again, perceptions that you are convincing yourself exist. And you can convince yourself to see the beauty of the beach in your day-to-day life. And so it's like you're just kind of reframing it a little bit for Bitcoiners, and you know, for the Bitcoiners that are just kind of on the edge of this rabbit hole of spirituality and philosophy and that subsect. So it's a lot of fun, and I really appreciate your writing and its ability to do that.
It's kind of like, okay, if you are it's like being in the Matrix, really. I mean, and then we let's say that we were wearing the color glass lenses, you know, and everybody's, let's say, wearing this orange color lenses, and then seeing the world through them, right? But then unless you take them off, you don't know how your reality is being filtered. And then so you kind of are deep inside the programming, and it's in your language, of course, you know, the language that the kind of put together the fabric of Matrix. Like, you know, I mean, some people actually, I mean, I personally believe that we live in kind of hologram, that each person has a hologram, and then has all the belief systems and vibrations and everything, like the geometries, that they hold a certain reality. And that, you know, we kind of living in the bubble. And then it's held socially as well. So the individual programming is shared collectively, so that if you have the programming, for instance, you know, and then if you have the same programming as I do, then when we interact, then we actually share the consensus reality, right? And I experienced that early on in my life because I moved from Japan to the US, and crossing different cultures, basically, and experiencing myself using different language and learning to see the reality, you know, perceive things differently. It really helped me to see how societies are artificially constructed, and that, you know, even though I moved away from Japan, I was carrying my own programming, right? Japanese social programming, that I was acting as Japanese person, seeing the world as Japanese person, and it created a friction when I encountered and interacted with Americans who don't have that programming. So that kind of gave me insight to see the fact that we all have this programming, right? And then, so once, you know, we interact with each other, we don't actually think about this. Like even the Bitcoiners who are on the social media, that they also have certain kind of programming that is shared among Bitcoiners, or some of them actually the extension of programmings that were developed in the fiat system. They're just bringing them in, and until the one steps out, like until the programming broke down, and the bubble of hologram collapse, and then you get outside of yourself, you just have no idea. Like you just can't see it. And I think what's happening now is that there is a global awakening of humanity, that somehow, like, people are experiencing out-of-body experience, near-death experience, spiritual awakening, that they are getting out of the hologram. The hologram just collapsed, and that they wake up, basically, and then realizing, wow, this is like we live in a dream state of reality. This is not real. This is just simply like a matrix, like a hologram, Then once you have that awareness, how can you go back to normal life and act, as usual, right? It's like that would change you, And I think some people haven't had that yet. And some people, I think some Bitcoiners who haven't had that kind of experience, I think that they experienced it with psychedelics, like ayahuasca, or, I don't know what other type of plant medicine that they use. But plant medicine provides that kind of opening, that you actually get to see reality, the real reality outside of the matrix. And then once you have that glimpse of it, you just start questioning about everything, So but then again, the integration of it requires us to embody the awareness and start living that kind of, start to embody that pure consciousness. And so that it's not just like, okay, yeah, I went to this ayahuasca ceremony, and I saw different dimension, and then I had a mystical experience, and I came back, and that was a kind of a unique, interesting experience, and I had for 3 days, but now I'm back to normal life. That's I think some people are, for some people that's how it is. But I think it's there is a way to actually embody that kind of transformation as the new consciousness that is burst from that kind of experience, and once each person engage in embodying that kind of awakening, you can hold your own node, right? And then start to contribute, creating a new decentralized network, of consciousness. And then the more Bitcoiners run the node and hold that higher vibration and perception, I think that we can actually create a new civilization that based on that kind of awakened consciousness. And that's, I feel like, that's what I want to see the Bitcoiners do as the next step. And the technology brought us together. We have new money as a tool. We can create a new civilization. And the crucial thing, the most important thing is that for us to anchor higher vibrations and uplift humanity with our clear consciousness. So yeah, so I think that's kind of like Sama was, maybe I feel like Sama is wanted to do that. He always talked about that, right? Like that we are running the node, and we each is our node, and yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's very inspiring, and I think a great place to begin wrapping up our conversation today. So, how can people connect with you?
Or Twitter, Nozomi Imagine, at Nozomi Imagine, my name, Nozomi, and then word Imagine, so MAIGINE. Yeah, so it's, yeah, so that's maybe, I rarely tweet nowadays. I'm very not active. So, but if you send me message there, I will respond. So, yeah.
Have you thought about getting on Noster?
I have an account, but I haven't really active. I haven't found a way to actually use it well. But maybe I have to spend some time to figure it out.
Yeah, I would recommend feeling into it.
Yeah.
Just sitting on it, and maybe scrolling a little bit if you feel called.
Is it different than X? I mean, how is it different?
So it's the feeling, really. It's the divine feminine that comes through. Yeah, there's something about the self-empowerment that guides people, that's guiding the content on there, and so far it feels very pure, and there is a lot, and like zaps are a value exchange with Bitcoin Lightning. So there's there's Satoshis flying around. It is a really cool place, and it's a very different feel. So I would recommend for
so it's not so much filtered by algorithms.
No, in fact, what I find is that it's almost a little bit harder to find the content that you like because it doesn't have quite the algorithm. I think there are platforms out there that are developing to try to help you get aligned with some of your interests. But honestly, I would, if you start kind of the manual way and just go with maybe go on Twitter and find some profiles which you like, and see if they're on Nostr and begin following them there, then you can really kind of organically build the people that you want, to collaborate with and to see their content. But like for you, especially who has,
I should try that. Yeah.
And an audience, you could just put that information out there, and people would, because that's a big thing about any of this. It's all a big network effect, so yeah. So like the more that we can provide genuine value on these platforms, the more that people will engage with them and actually want to be there. So
yeah, I would try experimenting on that. And
all right, Nozomi, well, thank you so much for coming on today. This has been a super fun conversation, and I definitely want to speak to you after you have the retreat. I think you said it's down in Mexico, Joe Dispenza retreat. So that sounds like it's going to be amazing in June.
Yeah.
Well, enjoy it. Yeah.
Yes, I will.
And we'll continue to keep in touch. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
You bet. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.